Yeah, I think that's a great question. If you look at kind of the threat landscape today as it's been constantly evolving, ransomware today has become incredibly easy to execute, incredibly easy to scale. I think largely in part due to a couple primary factors. One, it's this whole idea or this mindset of cloud adoption, right? How do we bring our users, our data applications to the cloud? Secondly, is the increase of these hybrid type environments or these remote workforces, people being able to work anywhere or everywhere today, across all these different applications in the web, with different business units across different teams. And so I think those two coupled together have really given rise to these ransomware attacks that we see all over the news today. So if you think about the anatomy of a ransomware, the breakdown of how a ransomware attack works today, there's really three steps. That first step is really that initial malware incursion. How are attackers identifying their victims? How are they performing reconnaissance, identifying who they want to go after? How do they want to reach that endpoint? That's where that initial malware incursion takes place. Once they gain that initial foothold into the organization is really when they move to step two. Step two is really all around kind of how do we maximize that initial foothold into the organization, or how do we maximize that compromise, right? This is where we start to see, tools being downloaded to start to steal credentials or monitor online collaboration across the different networks, the business units. Once attackers have had enough time to really start to gather the information they need, the data they want to access, and then hopefully with additional accounts compromised as well, is really when they start to look at how do we move for shift to that third step of the ransomware attack. And that last step is really around the extortion piece, that third and final step of a ransomware attack. This is where the alarm bells start to go off, people start to panic, and it really comes down to the ultimate question, do we decide to pay the ransom or do we decide not to pay the ransom? Most companies, if they decide not to pay, well, let's hope you have some great backup and recovery, because you're most likely not going to get that information back, and therefore it's going to most likely be leaked across the dark web, or might be sold to the highest bidder in terms of other additional ransomware threat actors or other bad actors out there. The other option is, if we do decide to pay, well, great. Maybe we got some of our data back, but what's not to say those ransomware threat actors are holding additional data for nefarious purposes or double extortion tactics later down the road. All that kind of begs the question. And if you're a company that is labeled as someone willing to pay, what's stopping them from coming back to you again, launching an additional ransomware attack, or selling it to the next highest bidder to do that same exact thing to your organization? So when it comes to looking at ransomware attacks and how do we best defend against these ransomware attacks, the only way to truly prevent this vicious cycle is really focusing our attention on that malware incursion, that initial first step. If we can prevent that initial access, prevent that malware incursion, then we can prevent additional compromise. We can prevent the extortion, the extortion tactics from ever gaining foothold and ever infecting those endpoints to begin with.